This episode offers psychosocial education designed to inspire and motivate our listeners. The information provided does not constitute a therapeutic relationship nor a substitute for professional mental health care. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, call 911, go to your nearest emergency room, or for listeners in the United States, text 988 for the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Warning, this episode contains brain food that will lead to improved emotional and social intelligence. Thanks for tuning in to Harvesting Happiness today for a healthy serving of consciously prepared brain food. This is Lisa Cypers Kamen, your host. Since 2010, we've been broadcasting sound ideas for better well-being. Each week, we spotlight diverse thinkers and doers who are contemporary trendsetters and change agents, devoting their lives to creating a better world. I invite you to listen and change how you think about human happiness. Our award-winning content is fresh, optimistic, and purpose-driven media that promotes well-being from the inside out. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for joining me on today's show, where you will learn about navigating next steps, a soulful journey of discernment. My guest today is Emily P. Freeman. She is a Wall Street Journal best-selling author of 6 books, including The Next Right Thing, A Simple, Soulful Practice for Making Life Decisions, and How to Walk into a Room, The Art of Knowing When to Stay and When to Walk Away. With a master's degree in spiritual formation and leadership from Friends University, her most important work is to help create soul space and offer spiritual companionship and discernment for anyone just struggling with decision fatigue. And I have to say, Emily, this is everybody. I think we're so worn out. We are so worn out.
Bless us.
Bless us. Bless us. Emily has been a featured speaker for many organizations. She is a prolific writer, contributing articles to Today's Parents, Christianity Today. She also has a nationally ranked podcast, The Next Right Thing, that has millions and millions of downloads. And you can also get clarity through her weekly newsletter, The Soul Minimalist. Thank you so much for being in the house, Emily.
I'm so glad to be here with you.
I am really glad you're here because when we talk about decision fatigue, it reminds me of a statistic that I cannot recall the exact number, but the thousands of decisions that human brains have to make in a day, most of which we're not even aware of. And then you add the ones that we really need to make with awareness, and we're exhausted.
It's 35,000. I've got that number on hand for you.
Thank you, girl.
That's what they tell us.
Right?
It sounds unbelievable.
Yep.
But then when you live your life, you lay your head down on the pillow at night, you're like, no, yeah, I definitely made 35,000 decisions today. So it is real.
And I don't know about you, but I feel it like at the end of the day, when I put my head down on the pillow, and I often say to Chris, I feel like my brain is worn out today. That's the sensation. Like there's this heaviness in my noggin.
Totally. And there's the decisions that we're making that are just kind of subconscious, like, should I eat this or that? Should I go here or there? And we're just doing those. Those still count as decisions, even though they're sort of subconscious. But then throw in, caring for someone you love, throw in a diagnosis, throw in a big decision at work or an argument you're having with a friend. And those decisions multiply exponentially and they take their toll.
And they do have weight. They take their toll, they have weight. And I think when we talk about making decisions, many of us feel that we must rush to even make them, like that we're not even tuning into the process or the journey of getting to a good decision. We feel like, okay, we've got to get this crossed off our list so we can move on to the next thing because we know there's a next thing. So we've got to clear it right away. And I'm not so sure that's your approach.
Yeah, that is an approach, but I have found it to not be long-term the most favorable approach, I would say. Of course, we know there are those decisions that, especially depending on maybe your vocation or your role in life right now that will come across our plate and we have 7.5 seconds to make it and we just have to make a call. But a lot of those decisions in life, especially the ones that give us the most trouble, tend to be ones that we do have a little bit more time. But often we will rush to try to find a solution or an answer because, and here's the key, we deeply dislike the discomfort of having a decision to make. So we would rather rush to conclusion than to hold the tension just a little bit longer and consider what might be my true best next right thing.
Let's talk about that discomfort thing because forget the next thing, just the discomfort thing, right? As humans, we are hardwired or driven by pleasure. And when we find ourselves in that pickle of discomfort, you're right, we do want to get out of it ASAP, right? We don't want to sit with the discomfort when actually that discomfort might be a harbinger of growth. It might be necessary for the next step, and we will not die from it. We will not die from emotional discomfort. That is also truth.
That's right. That's right. Well, and when I look back, I'm so glad you said that because when I look back on my own life, on some of the decisions that have given me the most trouble, on the one hand, they're the ones that have usually been a question that I'm holding about a particular space, community, commitment that I'm discerning, should I stay here or is it time for me to move on? And in those situations, man, those take longer to make. A lot of times they are connected in with our identity, with our family, even with our money or our degree. And so that makes them more difficult to make. But I'll also say, I have been willing to hold that tension a little bit longer. When I look back, those are some of the most transformative, life-changing decisions. And man, those are things we don't want to rush.
Yes. And you write about this in the first person in your book about taking a decision about a big shift with your husband and then going, oh my, what did I do?
That's right. What have we done? Well, yeah, there have been several, I talk about life as a house, and every room of that house holds a story. And some of those rooms we know, hey, this is my room. This is where I belong. And other rooms of our lives, we've been there for a while. And then something starts to shift and we might begin to question. And that happened for us in the last 4 years in a particular space we were in, which was our faith community. And we were discerning, over time, slowly, like, is this our space still? There were lots of really wonderful things about it. And that's the thing when we're in a space where we start to question, sometimes it takes a while because we think, well, there's stuff I love about this. And there's good things that have happened here. And it's been a gift to me. But sometimes it takes time for us to begin to discern, do the things I love about this space, do they outweigh what's at stake if I choose to stay or if I walk out? And so that is not a process that can be rushed.
Which about this time, we probably should have a clip of that famous Clash song, Should I Stay or Should I Go, playing right in the background.
Yes, totally.
Because as I was preparing for our time together, this is all that kept repeating in my mind. I'm like, I'm hearing the song and and it might not be a bad preamble to get one sort of psyched into that headspace.
Yeah.
Like asking the question might just open the door to the answer.
Well, and that is something a lot of us, depending on our social location, our family of origin, kind of where we live, how we grew up, just asking the question for some of us is the hardest part because we are afraid once we start pulling at the thread of what might come, what answers might rise to the surface, we're like, nope, not going to even open that door because asking questions about spaces that we're in, specifically spaces that are really deeply connected to our identity, can really be scary.
Yeah.
But I think what I'm trying to encourage all of us to do is just take that one tiny next step to begin to ask the questions about the spaces of our lives, not because it's time to make a change even, but just to be honest about what's really going on here. Can I take some assessment of this space and some of those places within us where maybe we're feeling some like tiny yellow flags or red flags? Sometimes just saying it out loud can help us discern, oh, actually, this isn't a red flag. This was just something I needed to have one conversation about, or maybe make one little shift. I don't need to leave this room. I just need to make a little change. So asking the question can actually bring some relief if we are brave enough to ask it in the first place.
Love that. which, speaks to that ordinary courage, right? As Brene Brown calls it, like we're not talking about, gathering a huge gale force wind of courage to go into battle. It's just sort of the ordinary courage, like
Yeah.
stepping up, showing up, and being curious about where we're at. And I think you hit on something very important about not necessarily wanting to open Pandora's box or pulling the
Right.
thread on the ball of yarn and then realizing that we fear that we're going to unravel our whole lives or life as we know it, which is not real. That's false.
It's false. I had a friend one time when I was questioning about an invitation I had received. It was a professional invitation, and it was an honor to be asked to do this particular thing. But I asked my friend Holly, I was like, Holly, I know you've done this a lot, and I have a few hesitations about this invitation. And I'm not sure, should I trust myself in those hesitations, or do I just need to get over myself and move on with it? And she said something to me I've never forgotten. She said, Emily, tiny red flags rarely shrink. They only grow. And I have found that to be so deeply true in my own life that anytime I sense this is just the tiniest red flag, I don't know, never has it shrunk. It's always grown.
Hail to Holly on that one.
Right?
That's good. That's really good. Yeah. And it is like the little uh-oh, right? And we try to put the uh-oh to bed because it takes us off the track or the path that we think we need to be on.
It does. And I think what I would add to that for anyone who's like, uh-oh, I have a million tiny red flags in my life right now. Here's one caveat I would say to that, which is every hesitation is not necessarily a red flag. So if you are sensing a hesitation, now it's time to enter into some discernment where you have to figure out, okay, here's a hesitation I have. Is this a red flag? Some of us call everything a red flag and we head out the door at the first sign of trouble. There are others of us who see red flags and we ignore them completely and we stay no matter the cost. And what I would love to encourage us to do and what I found to be most helpful is just go ahead and assume every hesitation is a yellow flag at first. Some of them will become red flags, but not all of them. And so that requires some time and some process.
So let's talk a little bit about how we even connect with these flags, because many of us, there's a bypass, right? We're so involved with our lives, with our days, with the demands that are placed upon us, which are huge.
Yeah.
I mean, just to be alive requires a lot. So some people would say, I don't even have time. Forget flags, right? Like I'm just facing forward and just surviving here. So maybe give us a few words of encouragement to help us slow down and tune into that voice that exists within each one of us. And sometimes we shut them up.
Well, I think what you bring up is you are describing so many of us who are deeply exhausted and who are in need of buckets and maybe swimming pools full of grace. Because sometimes we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves, not just to get everything done and take care of all the people who need taking care of and checking all the things off our to-do list. But underneath all of that, there is a constant humming that's happening in our inner life. And our inner life deeply needs a break. And so I would say before you can even begin to maybe name red flags or yellow flags or decide if it's time to leave or not, I would say the first step in all of that is to be your own friend and to come alongside yourself like you would someone you deeply love and give yourself space and time to just be who you are. Find things that help you come alive, even if it's 10 minutes at a time, just to kind of get a little bit of wiggle room of reminding yourself, oh, I'm a person. I have things I love. There are things about the world that I love. And how can I reconnect with those things before I even begin to evaluate something that might need to change?
What I hear you saying is, or giving us collective permission to do, is to indulge ourselves in a micro dose of joy.
Beautiful.
Like that we can't, we might not be able to have the hour or two or day to go and, run in the fields and pick flowers, or, whatever it is that we might think will bring us joy, but at least to carve out a few minutes each day with grace to remind ourselves that, oh gosh, yes, we are this person that is separate and distinct from the demands and also the relationships, those that we are bound to. in our family systems or through work, that yes, we still have this little part of ourselves that is separate, distinct, unique, and precious.
It really is a practice of mindfulness
Yeah.
where I am not my routine. I am not my feelings. I am not any of the things that I engage in. I'm not my to-do list, that I am a human person who is uniquely made to move through the world in a way different from anyone else. And that just sitting in that for a few moments, even though it sounds so small, for me, when I actually get in touch with just this right now moment where I am, it doesn't solve my life's problems. It doesn't
No,
bring
it
world
doesn't.
peace, but it does bring small peace just to my world in these few moments. And that really can help me, maybe not finish my whole day, but it can help me do my next right thing.
At least reset, right? So you reset,
Yeah,
ground,
that's right.
you take a deep breath and you go, okay,
Mhm.
I can do this next phase. We are going to need to take a break. And when we come back, we are going to continue this. I love this conversation, this chat with my guest today, Emily P. Freeman. She is the author of How to Walk into a Room, The Art of Knowing When to Stay and When to Walk Away. To learn more about Emily and her work, please go to emilypfreeman.com. You can find her on X at Emily P. Freeman, on Facebook at Emily Freeman Author, and on Instagram, Emily P. Freeman. Here comes that pause. We'll be right back. Harvesting Happiness is rooted in science. Our work facilitates applied positive psychology practices through media and consulting. We're committed to sound ideas for better well-being, leading to increased life satisfaction and a better world for everyone. We're not into pseudoscience or quick fixes. We're focused on common sense backed by rigorous research. Healthy critical thinking is the foundation for our discussions. We encourage you to challenge preconceptions and explore ideas with a curiously discerning mind. Collaboration with our guests is united by an inclusive vision to boost resilience, critical thinking, communication, and problem solving through civilized discourse and pleasurable relational engagement for everyone. Each day, we have the intellectual freedom to be happy or the liberty to be miserable, regardless of external circumstances. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, please seek support because good psychological health is vital to the achievement of a healthy and satisfying life. Visit harvestinghappiness.com for psychosocial and educational services that boost emotional and social intelligence. And we're back, continuing the conversation with my guest today, Emily P. Freeman. We're talking about navigating next steps, a soulful journey of discernment. Let's get back to it. Emily, prior to the break, we were talking about or separating our thoughts, feelings, and actions from the essence of who we are as a person. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about how challenged we are to do that, right? And then also how this plays into cultivating better discernment in our lives.
What an excellent and profound question that we could spend 7.5 weeks talking about, I think.
At least.
At least, but we'll do it here in the time we have. And really, it's a question of personhood. And, when I think about how we all move through the world, we all have a lot of things in common. We all have feelings. We all have thoughts. We all have bodies. We all have instinct. But we don't all lead with the same one at the same time. And so for me personally, when I walk into a room, like physically, when I physically walk into a room, I tend to lead with one of these centers of intelligence. And then I kind of have one that's a supportive and then one is repressed. For me, I lead with my feelings. So I feel it all first. Like everything's a feeling. I can name the feeling. I can name your feeling. I might not be able to tell you why I feel a particular way. And I might not be able to kind of shake the feeling, but that's what I lead with. And then my repressed center of intelligence for me personally is action. It's not that I don't act, but sometimes the things that I choose to do in response to my feelings are not productive, let's say. And so my work is bringing my repressed center back online and learning how to bring in my sort of supportive center, which is my thinking center, to try to discern. And this is a whole life's work, right? But discern my feelings tell me give me really important information.
Yes.
So how can I integrate the important brilliance that I have of feeling first in a room with my integrated thoughts? And then that can inform my action. Because I think a lot of us, at least in our Western culture, what we tend to do is we glorify one of these centers above all the others. And I believe it's the thinking mind. I think a lot of us tend to say that, well, you can't make your decisions based on your feelings. You have to be logical. You have to base it on fact. You have to base it on 1, 2, 3 data. And that is true. It's good to use that as a data point, but it's not the only thing we're to base our decisions on. And so I think one thing is that I'm beginning to learn and integrate in my own life and in conversations with others is that I am not my feelings, my thoughts, or my body alone. But all of these things bring into the fore an invitation for integration as I enter rooms, both physical rooms and metaphorical rooms, so that I can make my decisions as a fully formed human, not as just a feeler or just a thinker or just an instinct gut person.
I really love and respect what you've just shared, because I think that so many of us are linear thinkers, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not right left brain thinkers, right? Where we're not where we are, but we don't think of ourselves that way, where we're sort of pulling all of it together, integrating it, and then making our decision to move forward in some way. But the discernment part, the image that comes to mind is teasing a knot, right? Like we have a knot in our hair, or for those of us who have had kids, particularly girls with long hair. I mean, I can remember teasing the knot out of my daughter's hair. And in order for it not to cause an enormous amount of pain, there needed to be sort of care as I was doing this. And this is what I'm sensing from what you're describing too. It's not that you don't go in and try and pull apart the knot, but you do it with care, recognizing that there's more components than just getting rid of the knot.
Care and what you're describing is tending to something. And when you tend to something and care for something, you cannot rush it. And
Yeah.
this is desperately maddening because we just, when we sense something is off or we're trying to be like, I feel a certain way, but I can't make sense of it. We just want to rush through. Right.
Right.
And what I have found is both deeply maddening and also extremely helpful and transformative is learning how to be a better listener, is learning how to listen not only to the room and space around me, but also to the inner life within me. And when I do that, again, you can't rush it. But when I give it the time it takes, I make better decisions. I just do.
I hear you. The deep listening issue is a challenge for many of us, because we're oftentimes thinking of the response to the other while the other is speaking. And yet the real information, the real heart of the conversation occurs from the just taking in the information and being with the other, right?
Yeah,
Like
that's
that's
right.
a gift.
It's a
That's love.
listening feels a lot like love. There's a
Yeah.
quote that says that, and I can't
Yes.
remember who said it.
I can't either, but
But it's out there.
we know it. I think we're thinking of the same one.
We probably are. Well,
Yeah.
and I think that, that's a challenge I would, or maybe an invitation. I like invitation better. That's an invitation I would issue, which is when the next time you find yourself in a listening role, when someone is sharing something with you, whether that's something difficult, something exciting that happened to them, something that's just regular about their day, the invitation is rather than respond to them with a statement, what would it be like if you were to ask a question
Yeah.
from what they share, whether it's something difficult or something thrilling? And then when they answer your question, what if you were to ask a second question? Now, that sounds very simple, but I have found that when someone listens to me in this way by asking not just the first, but also the second question, I feel loved. I feel seen
Yeah.
and heard and supported. And it's remarkable when you're the question asker, it seems very simple and almost neutral. But when you're the one who is being asked the question, what that communicates to you is, wow, this person cares for me. It communicates care. It communicates that tending that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And the second thing I would say is not only can we do this for one another, but we can also do it for ourselves. That when I, myself, in a room by myself, sense something is off, rather than try to immediately launch into fix it and solve mode, What if I were to ask myself the first question, listen for the answer, and then ask myself a second question? This can be a
Yeah.
deeply transformative practice.
Doing it for oneself
Mhm.
that's a good invitation, because I think that we're taught, society teaches us to, if we want to be happy, we strive to be outer referenced, right? To be of service, to show
That's
up
right.
in the world and give our strengths or our gifts or our skills to be of use to other people. And what I hear you suggesting is the application of that to oneself,
And
to the
that it doesn't,
reflection in the mirror.
yes, the reflection, and it doesn't have to be binary. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
either this or that.
Yes.
That it's actually both. That bringing peace to our surroundings is not just an individual, my own personal development. It's also not just pouring out in service to others. It's actually both. And this is
Yeah.
this is how we make a difference in our own lives and in the lives of the people around us.
Yeah. Tending, going back to the tending. And then I think of the metaphor of, fire tending.
Mm.
We're feeding the fire just enough wood. There has to be just enough air, just enough ember to allow the fire to continue to flourish and keep warm and do what fires do.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely. And fire is such an interesting and fascinating metaphor when you think of it metaphorically, because
yeah,
fire can serve lots of purposes. It can warm us, it can keep us alive, it can cook our food. Like there are so many things
yes,
about fire that is generative. But then fire can also be destructive. It can ruin things quickly. It can take us by surprise and it can be really devastating. And that's one of the metaphors that I think about a lot when I think about changing our minds or discerning whether or not it's time for me to leave a space. I often ask myself, okay, Emily, what kind of fire is this? Is the fire that's happening inside me right now, is this one that needs to be held and tended and taken care of and monitored, almost like a controlled burn that we see, like sometimes we see in forests, or the indigenous people are really good at this. Like they've taught us this through the millennia. This is, we have to burn the underbrush in order to keep the forest healthy. Is that what this is? Or are we in a situation where it's like, five alarm fire? It's everything is, we got to get out of here no matter the cost. This place is not safe for me. Which kind of fire is it? And sometimes either way, fire's hot. And so we sometimes have to take the time to figure out, like, is this going to ruin me or is this going to save me? And we don't always know right away.
this is interesting because when I think about the actual risk of life and death type harm or trauma, 99.9% of the time, things are okay enough. Like those moments are so rare, so few and far between. They do exist, but knowing that is useful in the discernment process, right? Like when you
Yeah.
think about like, okay, I'm in a situation, something has to change or something must be done. Is it life or death? No. So we put that aside. Of course, you have only those few seconds when you're in a situation where
Right.
that really is the case, but most of the time that's not the case. So it gives us a little bit of grace, using a word that you had mentioned earlier, to slow down the assessment process.
It does. And that's such a great reminder that our bodies can become activated and tell us you're in grave danger.
Yes.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that we are in grave danger. And so that's where this integration of these three centers of intelligence is so important, because even though I feel like the world is ending, if I give it a minute, and like you said, sometimes there are emergency times, but most of the time we're not in an emergency. And so how can I slow my roll a little bit and bring these other centers of intelligence online so that I can enter into a process that can help me make a decision, not just based on, fight, flight, freeze, but I can do my next right thing with all of these centers of intelligence in mind.
And when we're in that state of that fight or flight, that very primal response, it goes back to where we started the conversation about having decision fatigue, right? That if we're in that state of constant stress overload, the body and the brain actually don't discern between the difference. It just recognizes there's a stress response, whether it's fictional or real or overblown or not. It doesn't actually know. It's sensing I'm in a stressful situation. And I think the goal becomes then to be able to walk ourselves back from a distressed place to one that is of like eustress, the opposite, right? It's the good stress of anticipation of something good that could be happening.
It's so true. And I don't want to speak out of my own expertise. I'm not a therapist, but I have been to therapy, my dear. And listen, raising my hand. And so, but that's where I have found a lot of help in this is in therapeutic conversations, and in self-care practices. And I would say, that can be a buzzword right now of like, oh, self-care, roll your eyes. But really, this is just what are some things that help me feel like myself? What are some things that can kind of bring me back down to earth? How can I get out into nature and feel connected with, my surroundings in a way where I'm not stuck inside my own head? Because a terrible place for me to make decisions from, especially ones that have big consequence, is when I'm stuck inside my own head too long. So I need to do something that's the opposite of the internet. I need to go out for a walk in my neighborhood. Again, this doesn't solve the problem, but it helps me move one step closer to being in a headspace to where I can solve the problem.
Well, I think it changes the energy, right?
It does.
By sort of stepping out, you do cool the temperature off a little bit and give yourself a little bit of distance so you can go back in and work towards a decision or at least better discernment that might lead you to the decision. We are nearly out of time, and I feel like I could continue this conversation with you all day because there's so much meat here, so much good stuff that we can use to serve our lives, serve our families, serve our communities, and makes us feel better connected, I think. I think that's a byproduct of this process.
I think you're exactly right. And the reality is we can never graduate from, retire from, delegate, or be done with making our decisions. And that's why this is a conversation that could just go on forever, is because who will help us? Who will guide us? Who will teach us how to leave rooms and find new ones and decide whether or not the time is right in a way that we're not either burning bridges or raising hell on the way out, that we can actually do this in an integrated, kind, healthy, human way as we move through our lives.
And those decisions are part of growth. Like they are necessary.
Yes. And to be expected. I think sometimes we think like, oh no, if something must be wrong, I must have done something wrong. No, you're a human person. And this is a normal part of life.
Yeah, humans doing human work. It's like, that's what we say around here.
That's good.
Things happen,
that's good. I love that. Yeah.
My guest today, Emily P. Freeman. She is the author of How to Walk into a Room, The Art of Knowing When to Stay and When to Walk Away. You can learn more about Emily at emilypfreeman.com, on X at Emily P. Freeman, on Facebook, Emily Freeman Author, and on Instagram, Emily P. Freeman. You should also tune into her podcast, The Next Right Thing. Thank you, Emily. This has been wonderful.
What a joy and delight to be with you today. Thank you.
Right back at you. This was great. Thanks for joining us on Harvesting Happiness today. This is Lisa Cypers Kamen on behalf of my guest, Emily P. Freeman, wishing you kind thoughts, kinder words, and the kindest of actions. Until next time, remember, happiness is an inside job. Happiness is your inside job. Please go out and rock your day and remember to be kind to one another. Want to explore more sound ideas for better well-being? Check out our new bonus edition content at More Mental Fitness by Harvesting Happiness on Substack and Medium. Subscribe, listen, and share hundreds of downloadable episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Connect with and follow us on most social media channels. To learn more about lifestyle management and mental fitness consulting services, please visit harvestinghappiness.com. Harvesting Happiness and More Mental Fitness are produced by Lisa Cypers Kamen, Andrea Mengele, Robin Boyd, Andrea Daly, and the excellent team at Podfly Productions, including Eric Begay, Kimberly Beck, and Alec Guess, in collaboration with TogiNet Radio, KBUU, RadioMalibu.net, and is available on PRX, the Public Radio Exchange.